Welcome to Elevate Your Event, your favorite podcast for transforming fundraising events. Join us weekly for expert tips and creative ideas to make your next event a standout success.
In this episode, we're joined by public speaking coach Johanna Walker to uncover the secrets of storytelling that connects, turning stage nerves into confidence and delivering speeches that leave your audience ready to take action. If you're looking to captivate your crowd and elevate your impact, this one's for you. Get ready to transform the way you take the stage.
Hey, well, welcome back to the Elevate Your Event podcast. We talk about all the various ways you can make your next fundraising event better. And we've got some special guests here in the studio today, along with myself, Jeff Porter, CEO of Handbid. We've got
Mark Labriola, the second.
The second. Because the second is always better than the first, right?
Well, I figure things get better with, iterations, so of course.
All right, and we've got Johanna Walker here with us as well. She comes from Lafayette, Colorado, and has decided to brave the Denver traffic and weather to come down here and hang out with us in the studio.
That's right.
Today.
Educate us on speaking.
Awesome. Johanna, I know you're a public speaking expert, but I don't want to do you a disservice. Go ahead and introduce yourself to our audience. Give us a little bit of your background and kind of talk to us a little bit also about, kind of how your expertise could lend itself well to those who are speaking at fundraising events.
Yeah, well, I come from a theater background. I mean, the long story is I was an incredibly quiet girl. Quiet, good, well-behaved girl. I didn't speak. I would go for days without speaking. And it was really through storytelling. I could always tell a story. I was terrified to raise my hand in school, but I could always tell a story. I could always tell a story. And it was through telling stories that I got connected to my own voice and my own power. And then I started working with women in jail and adolescent girls, helping them tell their stories. And then later on, working with nonprofit leaders and entrepreneurs and CEOs and discovering just across the board, we've all got stories to tell and we've all got parts of our voices that we've sort of kept on the back burner. And those are the stories and the parts of our voices that really connect us to our humanity. And when you're on stage speaking about something you're passionate about and some world-changing idea or mission, when you're connected to your humanity and you can help other people connect to theirs, that's what we all want. We want to be connected to something bigger and ourselves and one another, and we want to have an impact. And so I help people bring more of their humanity to the stage through speaking and telling great stories.
Well, that's awesome. And we've had podcast episodes before where we've really talked about the power of storytelling as it relates to kind of getting across the mission of an organization and what they're trying to do and get people kind of, on board with what you're doing and on board and not just an emotional standpoint, but obviously in a financial one as well.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, in terms of your coaching and what you could possibly bring to the table for some of our audience. Like, let's talk about, it's kind of it's not something that most, I would say, people that are running the fundraiser, whether you're the executive director, a board member or whatever, it's probably not your day job, right? So how can our audience learn, for this one event where they're doing like 25 to 30 minute speech, how can you help them, or what kind of resources can they go to that are going to help them say, hey, I need to make this speech the most impactful it can be? I mean, do you do coaching sessions like that, or?
Yeah, I do coaching sessions, and I help people get clear about what stories they want to tell, really. So, which means, who are the people, the humans that are being impacted by your work? And when you can people get so hung up in data and statistics, which is powerful and important and necessary, but when you can tie those to the actual story of a human being that has been impacted by this work, a single person, because the data is all about people and people's lives ultimately. So when you tell a story, then you draw the line from the stats, the data, the numbers to an actual human person who's been impacted. And when you can find those stories, that's what moves your audience to say, oh, I want I want to be part of this. I want to get on this train and I want to be part of this project.
So this seems like something, Mark, that would tie into what you guys do. So the power of story maybe in a video or something like that? Are you like...
Yeah, I mean, my thought is, because I've been to a lot of events too where it's like there's either no video or any type of content that comes in that space, or it's very poorly done. And a lot of times I feel like, man, if they just could tell this story better or show these people that they're impacting and communicate about it, they could raise way more money or get more people passionate or excited about what they're doing. And so they kind of, drop the ball. What do you think it is as far as, why don't people see this? Because I feel like we all connect with story. It's one of those things where we all want to be, the heroes of our own story. Yeah. But what is it that when someone starts to put together an event or starts to plan out of, how successful this next year is, or this last year is, and how successful we want this next year to be, but we need your help. Like, where is it that they miss this whole point of telling a story?
Yeah, it's a great question, because I feel like stories are all the rage these days, and everybody's talking about stories. And at least in my world,
no, it's true.
And you tell more stories. It's all about the story. But the truth is that most people don't really know how to tell a story. One. So they avoid it, or they kind of get lost on the back roads, and they lose their audiences because they don't know how to tell a story. But also people, when it comes down to it, they think it's fluff. They think, oh, no, my people really need to hear the bottom line. They need to get the numbers. They really need to hear the stats, and stories are fluff. People still get stuck in thinking the stories are fluff. But what I always tell people, the less you say, the more they'll hear. Rather than delivering just an onslaught of information, which is what happens a lot. I've heard it a lot, just info, data, numbers, info, little bits of information. It overwhelms your audience.
They don't remember half of it anymore.
They don't remember it. They feel overwhelmed and depressed. They don't know what to do with it. But when you can take them on a journey, you're really taking your audience on a journey. So you're asking, where are they when they walk into the room? Where do you want them to be when they walk out? And how are you going to get them there? So you're crafting a journey for your audience.
I like that. I mean, because I'll just go back through my own experience at fundraising events. And, yes, we build fundraising software, and I'd like to say that we have some expertise in fundraisers, but we're all learners too, right? I mean, constantly. And I would say over the years, there was a lot of that data, right? So my daughter has a rare disorder, Prader-Willi syndrome. So we used to tell people, well, here's how many kids are born a year in the United States with it, or here's how many people are born in the state of Colorado annually with it. And you start to kind of put these stats together, but they don't really do much, right? I mean, they might frame the problem in terms of how big it is, but I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, okay, the people in the audience want to know, how can I help? So I need to connect with something that I can help. So, okay, so there's 3 to 5 kids a year born in Colorado. I can't connect with that, right? So we started telling the stories of how the various things we were doing were, impacting the lives of, the people that we were serving. Everything from take for example, you're talking about adults with this disorder and long-term care. Well, let me explain to you what a day in the life is of an adult with this disorder, and the challenges they run into, in the services and the struggle that they have with the services available in the state. So you start to kind of describe these things, and you're telling this story, and all of a sudden, people are like, I want to help you solve that problem because I want to help Abby, or I want to help Jen, or I want to help Zach or something like that. They've now personalized it because we personalize it. I think that works.
Exactly.
So what do you think the framework is, right? So say everyone can't afford to hire a company like Brand Viva to make a really nice video for them. Like, what's other formats? Like, obviously from the stage, right? If you're just going to use your words and communicate, is there a particular formula or some sort of thing that people can go through, say, okay, like beginning, middle, and end, and this is how I should structure my story. And like you said, you kind of want to lead people to take them where you want them to end up by the end of your event, say.
Yeah. Well, really simplified, there's beginning, middle, and end. Before, there's the ordinary world, the problem, like what's not working, and then the normal world, the day-to-day. I go about my business, and I'm doing this, and I'm a little bit stuck, or something's not working. Here's my struggle. And then, boom, there's an explosion. Something happens. One day, something different happens. And that takes you on a different path. That takes you down a different path. And sometimes that's an accident. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's a decision, like I've got to get out of this boring world and create something new, so I'm going to launch out on my own, right? But there's a moment where something changes, where something happens, and you go down a different path. And then there's the after. Mm-hmm. What happens as a result of that moment? What changes? What becomes possible? What's the new world? What's the new vision, the new possibility because of that change? So simplified, we can go a lot deeper into all the complexities.
What's the disconnect, right? I mean, you can look at it both ways. So it's like, boom, like definitive event happens, and then yes, we get knocked off course, right? And so either the plan is to get us back on course, or the plan is to reestablish a norm in that direction, in a sense, right? Because as a father of somebody with a disorder, all parents kind of start in the beginning saying, we got knocked out of course, we need to get back on course. Eventually, and not in all cases, but at least in most cases I've seen, that's not the intent. The intent is to say, we now need to live on this new norm. This isn't changing, right? So how can you help us get there? How do you help organizations, families, whatever, kind of get to that new norm? And it doesn't have to be about medical disorders. I mean, it can be about a variety of things. But a lot of cases, it's like the world is broken, right? And a lot of our clients are out there trying to not necessarily fix it, but allow people to compensate
to
for
cope.
it. To cope, yes.
Well, I think there are a couple of significant moments. There's the moment that throws you off course.
Yep.
But then there's the moment that throws you back on, or that throws you on a new course. And that's where the nonprofit steps in.
Yep.
It's that moment that this new idea, this helper comes along and carries you on in a new direction. Mm-hmm. So those are two really significant moments that you can...
Donald Miller. Along came a guide.
Along came a guide, exactly.
Yeah, totally. Because everyone wants to be, the hero of their own story.
Yeah.
And so it's like, how can you be the guide to help someone become the hero to their story?
Right.
The Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and look, I mean, I've been to a number of events recently, and one that I went to, I think they kind of missed the mark a little bit on like this whole story part, right? Because, you think about like, okay, so here's this problem that we have in our society or in our community, and so we're just applying dollars to kind of help people cope with that problem, and people weren't fully connecting with that, because had they gone back and said, okay, we're dealing with at-risk youth in Colorado high schools, and let me tell you the story of, Jenny or Susan or Chris or Mark and what they're going through in high school and how we're helping them cope or deal with that, it would have been a more impactful story. Mm-hmm. But instead it's like, we got 23 high schools, we're in 6 of them, we need to be in all of them. Here's how much money it costs. Give us some money, right? It wasn't getting there with that, so.
Yeah. I'm working with a woman who's building a new nonprofit, working with formerly incarcerated citizens, helping them get back on their feet and talking about the rate of recidivism. And so she came to me with, again, so many really powerful statistics. But when she brought her talk to me at first, it was like I didn't feel anything. I got it intellectually, but I didn't feel anything. And then when we got into the story of Jenny, who had an apartment but couldn't live in it with 3 children and ended up going back to her illegal way of making money so that she could pay her housing, just the whole story of the complexity of the system, then she has a way forward. So then it's like, oh, I feel something for Jenny. Like, I want to help Jenny get a place so that she can have her kids and do the job. And so that is totally different than piling on a lot of numbers.
Yeah.
Take me to an actual person.
Yeah, but I think, you think about, we talked about the video, all the different mechanics around this, but it does come back to kind of creating that narrative and being able to not just communicate it in a 4 to 5 minute video, but to get up on stage and do the same thing. And so let me ask you this question, because sometimes, even if we have the narrative down, the storyteller still has to have some skills, or at least needs to have some coaching, I would think.
Yeah.
Because we're not all innately great storytellers, right?
It's true.
You always envy the guy that, is always have people around him and he's telling a story about this past weekend, and you're just like, man, why am I drawn to you? Or why do I really want to listen to you? And how are you able to command this audience?
Yeah. So I work with people on getting connected to their bodies and their voices. As speakers,
hey, talk to us
we're
about
standing on. You're standing on stage and you've got this room full of people, and nerves might be racing through your body, and you're losing your breath, and your knees are wobbling, and you feel like you want to throw up. Or maybe it's not that extreme, but it's just
your mouth is dry.
Your mouth is dry. Your voice is a little bit shaky. It shows up differently. So what I help people do is turn all of that energy, because that's energy. It's energy, and it's vibration, and your voice is vibration, and your voice is your expression of your human truth. So all that is powerful energy. So what I help them do is to take that energy and channel it, use it. That's actually your battery pack. What most people do is try to stuff it down. They try to stuff it. They try to shut it down. They try to tuck it in. And what they're doing is tucking in all their power. So what we really want to do is take all of that nervous energy and use it, turn it into your power.
And I think if you're telling a story, I could be wrong about this because I am not a trained public speaker, but if you're telling a story, you should be able to just tell the story. You don't need the teleprompter. You don't need the speech. You don't need the written out, right? I think if you can connect with it at that level, I kind of feel, maybe I'm wrong. What do you think?
I think it's hard because sometimes if you don't have a teleprompter, then you can't connect on all the points that you want to share. If you think about most presidential addresses, they're via teleprompter.
Not all of them, but yeah. Some of them, more of them maybe should be.
But, there is that element.
I think practicing. You just got to practice.
Yeah.
I hosted a story slam in Boulder for 10 years. So a lot of, where you tell a 5-minute story, and it's competitive storytelling.
Okay.
And you got to practice because it's hard to tell. Your story, but you have to be able to craft a story that fits into 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And so your story. So when I'm working on a story that I'm telling just for a story slam or for whatever, I tell it over and over again in the shower, riding my bicycle, and hone it as I'm working on it. So I don't need a teleprompter, but it's also not memorized. Yes. It's just in my bones, it's in my skin, and I know how to tell it. And then I really connect to the story as I'm telling it because I've practiced.
Yeah, and I have really tried to do a lot more networking events and different types of things so that I can get used to saying what I do, what do we do here, and so I think it's very important to be able to practice that with other people, because the thing that I started to learn is that when I said certain things, I could see someone's eyes light up a little bit or get curious. And so then for me, it was I need to remember that next time I share this, that I lead with that or start, saying this in a particular way, because I think that connects with people. And then the more that you do that, the more that you
we allow
can
people to
it.
tell their story through video and audio.
Well, so for us, at Brand Viva, one of the big things is podcasting is very popular and people are very curious about it. And then they're always hearing about podcasting and podcasters and all this stuff. And so I noticed, I used to say, oh, we're a video production company that also does podcasting. And then I went to this event in Austin, and I have a show called The Friday Habit, and I wanted to kind of lead with that a lot. And so then I started saying, oh, we're a podcasting agency that does video content. And when I said that, it was like all of a sudden when I led with podcasting, people were like, oh, interesting. And then they'd want to know more, like, oh, what is that about, you know? And so I think it's just a lot, you know, it's like sharing like a handbid, right? It's like, okay, what is handbid? What do we do at handbid? You know, what's our thing, you know?
Well, I mean, we are an auction software company for charities and for commercial businesses, right?
Right.
But that's what we are.
Right.
But what we do is we help people realize their fundraising goals, or realize their revenue goals, you know, or realize that, you know, we help guests have a better experience. And we always try to talk about the areas that people can connect with.
Yeah.
You know, because, you know, you can say something like, I'm a man, or I'm a father of 4, or whatever. I mean, those are things that I am, but it's not what I do. It's not like, so, you know, that's the one thing when people get up on stage and they talk about their charity, that's where the facts can get in the way of the connection.
Yeah.
It's like, what are you? Well, we do animal adoption. Okay.
Right.
No, but now you start telling, you start to kind of connect with people saying, you know, we put dogs in homes, you know, or something like that. You know, something that people can say like, wow, that's awesome. We get dogs off the streets, or, you know, we help people prepare for life past prison, right? Versus, you know, we just kind of do prison training, or, you know. So that's the thing where I think, you know, when you start coaching people, you know, I'm really curious. Part of it is the delivery, and we were just talking about that. Like, can you deliver a story or not? And, you know, and then you have the substance of the story, and you got to put it all together, and then you got to do it in. I like the 5 minutes. I wish more people at charity events would only speak for 5 minutes.
I think most people wish that people. It's the worst when you have someone come to an event. Like, I brought some friends, and then they was like going for so long. My friends were like, "Hey, I gotta go."
Right.
And I'm like, "Oh, dang it, I lost my."
You know
friends.
this, like, I mean, you and I we've been to enough church services too, right? It's like, you know who you want to listen to for 35 minutes, and you know who you want to listen to for no more than 5, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of that same thing.
Yeah, I think it's like the difference between a good speaker and a great speaker is 1,000 speeches.
Interesting.
And, you know, but if you're doing 1,000 speeches and you're practicing your unconscious habits, that's what you're going to get good at. So practice, it's so much. Practice is what makes you a better speaker.
Yeah.
But you have to be practicing with intention. And often that means getting out of your comfort zone. Often when I work with people, they'll say, oh, but that doesn't feel natural. It doesn't feel like me. But really what they're saying is, that's outside of my comfort zone. Like,
that's where you need the alter ego. Have you read that book?
Feel natural.
I haven't, but I do know that Beyonce says that whenever she goes on stage, she channels Sasha Fierce, you know?
Yeah. She has a different name. And so maybe that's the way to handle it. So alter ego, he basically says you have to identify the person that you need or want to be in the moment.
Oh, yes, yeah. Right. And then become that. It's like Clark Kent and Superman,
yes.
You know? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Because it's crazy. Like, I have seen a number, and sometimes more so, I think, in the church space, but I have seen people that get up on stage and have this dynamic personality, and they're engaging, and they're all over the place.
Yeah, they're amazing communicators and all this stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then
you meet them off stage.
They get off stage, and you can't have a conversation with them.
Yes, I have experienced that.
I mean, this pastor at a church I went to up in Wheat Ridge for years would literally run off stage, get on his motorcycle, and take off before anybody could see him, right? But he's just an amazing speaker, and I always liked that. It's like, I want to channel some of that. I mean, the person who can get emotional on stage, the one that goes up and down the aisle and they're throwing their arms up and down and they're just getting people riled up, and they're just part of that. You love to see people be able to do that, and I think that intimidates some people because, like, I can never do that.
Yeah.
Not even with 4 drinks in me could I do that. Right.
So what is that? What do you think it is as far as like, is it channeling a alter ego or?
I don't know about channeling an alter ego. I mean, I just want to say that I, as somebody who was painfully shy for years and years and years and years, somehow being on stage was not scary for me. Like that was a place where I had permission to speak.
Yeah.
And
did
it was
you
like
feel
I
there
had
was a barrier around you? Like,
I don't know. It was like there was permission. Everybody had agreed. Okay, now it's your turn. We're going to listen to you. And boom, I come alive.
Right.
Boom, there I am. But then get off stage. I'm terrified. I'm running to the bathroom to hide, you know. Thankfully, I've worked through some of that, and I can actually talk to people off stage also. But for a long time, on stage was where I felt a lot more comfortable. So I don't know if it's about an alter ego, but it is about being more yourself. The more you can bring your quirky, neurotic, unique idiosyncrasies to the stage and have fun being you in all of your imperfect glory, that's actually what invites people in. People work too
100%
hard
agree.
to be somebody else.
So do you train people, or can people learn how to get rid of those inhibitions?
Absolutely. Yeah. I do a
Without
program
alcohol?
without alcohol. Way better than alcohol.
Look, I've been to plenty of fundraising events, and I've seen the executive director over there throwing a few down before they have to get on stage. Here we go. I've seen it.
What are some things that you
Well,
can
I do a program called Speaker's Playground.
Oh, okay.
I do a program called Speaker's Playground, and it's a lot about, I talk about coming in through the front door and the back door. The front door, we're doing public speaking 101. What do you do with your hands? What do you do with your feet? Vocal dynamics, your eye focus. Those are the kinds of things you think about when you think about public speaking, right? Coming in through the back door is improvisation and play and being goofy and ridiculous and taking up space in potentially uncomfortable ways. So you're getting out of your normal. Most of us have a pretty very, very narrow range of expression, and when we expand that in a kind of playful, potentially ridiculous way, it just makes it bigger. So then we have more access to more of our expressive possibility. But it can be very profoundly uncomfortable for people.
Yeah.
And when you're in a room full of people who are all getting slightly uncomfortable, it's super fun and transformative. And then people are like, oh, here I am. Oh, that's me. Oh, I actually get to be like that too. So it just opens the door to more range and more possibility. And then when you're in a more high stakes situation, you've kind of worked that muscle.
What you said earlier, that a lot of us try to push down or repress that nervous energy or whatever. You said, oh, you need to like let it out. What are some things what is it? You do jumping jacks before you go on stage and scream into the at the moon or something like that? Like what's the
some
practice?
of it, I think there are a couple different things. One is our mind. I talk about the power of storytelling all the time. Right. But the most powerful story you can tell is the one you tell yourself about who you are and who you get to be in the world. So one is just changing that story. You're going to love this. Right. Like that's what I always say before I get on stage. You're going to love this. And also, this is not about me. This is not about me. We get so hung up in, am I going to get it right? What are they going to think about me? Am I going to fit? But it's not about you. It's about the person whose life is going to change, whose life is going to be changed because of what you say, because you're willing to get up there and speak. Yeah. So that's one layer, is working on the mind. And then the energy, a lot of it is through breath and that vibration of your voice. As I said, your voice is your expression of your human truth. Your voice is vibration. Tension is an enemy to vibration. So any tension in your body is limiting your expression of your human truth. So we want to release the tension. And then it's just taking all of that energy, when my body is shaking and I take that energy and put it into my voice, That's using the vibration to actually make my voice more powerful and more focused and more direct and more impactful, because all of that energy is now, it's focused in my voice, and my voice is vibrating and my whole body is vibrating with it, and I am delivering my message.
I love it. I'm sold. Here's $1,000. No, you're...
But it's, rather than my nervous energy.
But what you just communicated there was confidence, and confidence sells.
Yeah, but you know what I was
doesn't.
doing?
Yeah.
I was actually grounding it. I was taking any nervous energy and like turning it into physical power,
right,
through my voice and my breath. So sometimes confidence doesn't come first. Confidence comes second. It's first, in spite of the nerves that might be racing. I get my body on board, and I get my body in the room, and I physicalize confidence, and then I actually feel it.
Yeah. I mean, this is even, I'm thinking like, even for fundraising or doing donor calls or like whatever you have to do, right? It's like, or sales calls. It's like a lot of people hate picking up the phone. Like, all right, I'm going to ask for a sale, or I'm going to ask for some funds or whatever. But it's almost like before you make that phone call, it's like recognizing, okay, I don't want to make this phone call. I'm nervous to talk to somebody I never talked to before or whatever. And it's like trying to channel that energy into that, phone conversation as well. It's not just like, public stage.
Right.
It's like.
Right. Anytime. Absolutely.
Yeah. Anytime.
Yeah. And it's also getting your attention to the other person. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not just about you, but really dialing into that connection. And when you're on stage speaking to a room full of people, how do you connect with everybody in the room? Like, the more connected you are to yourself, then it's like, wow, I am with, these people are with me, I'm with them, like really dialing in that connection.
And do you, maybe it doesn't matter, but are you someone that likes to move around when you talk, or do you kind of stand in one place, or is that really up to the person?
It kind of depends. In Speaker's Playground, a lot of times I get people to just nail their feet to the ground.
Okay.
And take that nervous energy, because a lot of moving is nervous moving. It's not intentional moving. And then you're just busy. You're on stage kind of busy. There's just like busy, and your energy is buzzing in a lot of different directions. So when you plant your feet on 2 feet and focus your energy on delivering that in a more singular, focused line to your audience, that's powerful. And that's practicing a muscle. It doesn't mean don't move on stage, but it's grounding, and it's practicing that focus. It's another way of channeling all that nervous energy in one direction towards your audience. Once you really know how to do that, then there's more space for moving around the stage, because you've got a body and you get to be physical, but then you move with more intention. And you're actually guiding your audience, telling them what to focus on, showing them what to focus on by where you move your body. When you're shifting an idea, when you want to change the mood of your talk, you want to just like shift the energy of the room. So your moving on stage becomes very intentional, rather than just racing around the stage because you're nervous.
Yeah, that's good advice, because I've seen that. I've seen people obviously that have done this a while and they move very well, and then I've seen people who really just kind of shuffle.
Yeah.
What about visual things? Do you think those help tell the story? If I've got images flying up on the screen or some other things to share on stage, just trying to give our guys some ideas.
Yeah, like a physical prop or something like that.
Yeah, prop, or even just like a video screen on stage, and I say, let me tell you about Samuel. Here he is, right? There's a video of him.
I think that can go both ways. One of the things I always say about stories is that stories are co-creative. I am telling you the story of what happened at the airport this morning, and you have an association with airports, or so whatever story that I'm telling, there are doorways where my audience can enter, and they have images and associations and memories that they're bringing to the story that creates meaning. It actually is where the connection happens and what makes the story meaningful for them.
I agree with you.
And so sometimes if you're giving me all the images, it's actually
you're not
interrupting.
That's why the book is always better than the movie, because the book is like, you created what this
looks like.
Yeah, and then you see the movie, you're like, the book is
I would
better.
have never cast him in that role.
Exactly. And it's part of the magic of telling stories is that co-creation that's happening. And so when you can be intentional about the doorways, everybody's going to find different doorways into your story. But that's part of the meaning. That's part of what makes the story meaningful, is that the listener is bringing their own associations. Doesn't, sometimes images can enhance a story, for sure. But I always encourage people to let the story speak for itself.
No, I think that's great advice. And as I'm thinking through like the various fundraising events I've been to, I really do think if you could narrate a story effectively, some of the stuff they've shown on stage it's just not needed.
Yeah. Yeah.
To your point. But then I think also up front, saying to yourself, here's my audience and what parts of my story could connect with them, I think is an important element, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I think about it like just for my own charity, we're talking about what it's like to raise a child with a disorder. So I've got a lot of parents that are in the audience, and they're going to connect at that level, and so.
Well, I think one of the powerful things about your story, right, is like when you talk about, having Abby, and like, as a parent, I remember the feeling, like one is you're already nervous. Like, is everything okay with my baby? Like, do they have 5 fingers, or 10 fingers and 10 toes? Like, right. All this stuff. And so it's like when you share that story of like, then we're told that things aren't normal and that it's not as all the others have been. It's like, oh man, like that's like our greatest fear as a parent.
But you connect with that because you're a parent.
Right.
Right. And so I love what you're saying, which is understand your audience and what areas they're going to connect with. Yeah. Right. If I've got this is an absurd example, but if I'm in a room with a bunch of cat lovers, talking about saving dogs is
right.
probably not going to connect with them. Right. So, I think that's a huge takeaway for me, is starting to figure out like, okay, so for the people in my audience who aren't parents, how am I going to connect with them? Mm-hmm. And what other areas are they going to be able to kind of insert themselves into my story and say, I relate to that. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And here's how I now feel like I have a part in this. And so that's how I then get connected to the mission, and then obviously what the ask is going to be.
Yeah. Yeah, it's finding the universal themes. There are the specificities that some people are going to connect to, but through the specificity is the universal.
Yeah, what does Donald Miller call that? What was the I have to go back and look, but it's like it's the extrinsic thing. Like it shouldn't have to be this way.
Oh, yeah.
You remember what I'm talking about?
That's exactly what it is.
Right.
Like you shouldn't have to do this, Right. Yeah, you deserve better.
Yeah. I gave a talk, this was several years ago when I was first starting my business. I was invited to speak on how I walk the edge. And my talk was about how my story of not having children. Mm-hmm. And this was very personal to me, and it was the morning of the talk. I was trying to figure out how to get out of it. I was utterly terrified, and I was like, Johanna, why do you put yourself through this? You don't have to do it. You don't have to do it. And I was coming up with excuses and trying to figure out how to cancel, and I ended up doing it anyway. So many people spoke to me afterwards and said, thank you for sharing your story. Parents and non-parents alike. For many people who are not parents, they were able to say, oh, this helped me communicate with my family. This helped me this helped me want to tell my story. So one, it was like, oh, this is not about me. I got that message even deeper. It's not about you. It's about the person who's going to be impacted. But so many people connected to that story and said, oh, that makes me want to tell my story, or different doorways in. So we can't always know. It's great to know your audience ahead of time, but you can't always know. It's also a mystery. Mm-hmm. Who's going to connect where? So the more truthful you can be.
I think the bigger opportunity you have to connect with somebody, right? In a sense, right? Because there's a lot of repeat stories out there. I mean, there's people that will come back and say, yes, I connect with that. And I think the truth means that you're going to align better with a lot of the people that are doing that. But in the fundraising space, I mean, I think again, just to kind of wrap up kind of what we're talking about here, it's like I've got a captive audience. They're coming to this event. In most cases, they paid decent amount of money to be there, and now I have not just the entire event. I have the entire event to kind of lay in the story, but I'm going to have a captive moment where I'm going to have the entire audience listening to me, and I've got to be really impactful. So I got to practice it, but I also have to figure out like what elements of my story are likely to connect with my audience and how do I emphasize those. And then to your point, maybe minimize the visuals and let them illustrate in their heads what it is that they're connecting with. Am I getting that right?
Yeah.
You think so?
I think so.
And then let them kind of create those synapses, right? Like those connections to what you're doing from it.
Yeah, I think being prepared too is another good thing. Like you said, like practice. Yeah, because I feel like so many people. I know for myself, I am comfortable being on stage, and I don't really have a problem getting in front. And so sometimes I wing it, like I'm just gonna wing it, I'll just get up there and do my thing, like I can wing it. But I will say you could probably capture more, be more impactful if you're a little bit more prepared. When you go out there.
And again, it's intentional practice. I always say practice makes better. We're not going for perfect. Practice makes better, but better practice makes change. So it's really, how are you practicing? Mm-hmm. How are you practicing? Which is getting out of your habitual. We have many habitual ruts that work to a certain extent, and they become habitual because they're working. And it can be so uncomfortable to break those habits. So that's so much about what practice means, is practicing what's outside of your habit. And that is what expands your range. And when your practice actually really starts to serve you.
Yeah, growth's on the edge.
If you're just practicing your habits, you're going to get really good at your habits that you're already really good at.
Right.
So intentional practice is what really makes a difference.
And this is, I guess, an interesting thing. So it's hard to grade these people that get up, these people that are brave enough, a lot of our audience brave enough to get up on stage and talk about their cause or speak at an event. How do they get the feedback? You know what I'm saying? Like, how do
honest feedback?
But do you feel like that they're going to get it? Because here's what's going to happen. You did a great job, Mark. Yeah. Thank you so much for getting up there. Right. You were awesome, right? But
there are two things. One is you can find somebody in your audience who is a colleague, a trusted colleague who's in your space, and ask them for some honest, like, what did you do really well? Always start with what went really well. Yeah. And then what's something I could have done better? So whenever possible, I try to ask somebody in the audience that I know, that I have a connection with, just for some feedback. What worked and what didn't. Yeah. Because that's what's going to allow me to grow and to have that reflection. But also practicing doesn't mean doing a lot of speeches in front of people who need to hear them, right? Practicing means practicing in lower stakes situations with a coach, with a group of people who are also practicing. So it's getting feedback outside of the high stakes situation.
Yeah.
And actually trying stuff and taking some risks and playing and figuring
with
stuff out.
With people that will give you candid feedback.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Thankfully, my wife does.
She's Italian, of course,
She's never held back. You're okay. That's what I said. You're okay.
We're like, wow, thanks.
Thanks, honey. I didn't see you get up on stage and talk to 450 people.
Yeah.
So it does take some guts. And so, definitely applaud you for helping people get better at this. It's
so fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It's so fun. And because a lot of people, even people who are out there speaking already, and, fear isn't so much their issue. But wherever somebody is on their speaking journey, they want to go someplace else. It's really fun to get to take them to that next place and shepherd them to that next place that for most people is a little uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And helping them befriend that discomfort and step into their power is really thrilling for me.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Because then they get to do the work they want to do in the world. They get to have the impact. They get to change the world in the way that they want to.
Yeah.
You know, especially with nonprofit leaders, like these people are here because they want to change the world. They're visionaries. They want to have an impact. And so when they can step into their power in a more authentic way, it's amazing what can happen.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing what can happen.
I agree. And it takes effort and practice for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe a little coaching. So,
Maybe a little
Johanna,
coaching.
if they'd like to hire you or send in their video of their last speech and get your feedback, how do they get a hold of you?
Probably the best place is on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, and I'd love to connect there. If you find me on LinkedIn and reach out, you know, I like to know where you found me and how we connected, and I'm always happy to jump on a call.
Johanna Walker Speaking is your
Johanna
LinkedIn
Walker
profile.
Speaking is my LinkedIn profile, and I'm happy to share an assessment. I have
Okay.
I talk about authenticity, relatability, and clarity. ARC. The arc of the story. Authenticity, relatability, and clarity is what makes a good story. So I have an ARC assessment that really lays out, okay, what does it take? How do I assess, am I really pulling off authenticity, relatability, and clarity? So it's a great just way to kind of put your story through a story assessment that I'm happy to share.
Love it.
All right. Mark, should we get an assessment? Maybe. Yeah. He and I were MCs together for my event, and it was funny. We did a whole script, and I'm as much of a wing it guy as I think he is. Mm-hmm. And then we're like reading the script, and we're looking at each other, like, throw the script away.
We're just going to wing it.
So I'm not suggesting that was a good idea.
Thankfully, I can sing, so I can fill any awkward time with some songs.
That's right. When Jeff forgot his lines, Mark's just going to sing. Oh, sometimes those can get cheesy, and sometimes on purpose.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Cheesy but fun.
All right, this has been awesome. It's been a great public speaking exercise.
Yeah, there we go.
So we're going to try this with a bigger audience next time. So, Johanna, thank you so much for coming and visiting us today.
It's so fun to talk
Thanks
to
for
you.
braving the Denver traffic, and drive safe on your way up north as we close this podcast out. Thank you guys for listening to our show, and until next time, happy fundraising.
If you enjoyed our show, please take a moment to leave us a review. You can find us on Apple, Google, and Spotify. Don't forget to subscribe for more great content. And if you're a fan of video, check us out on YouTube. Until next time, happy fundraising.